But let's first start out with getting an understanding of, or a sense of direct experience. We have a term in Dzogchen called Rigpa. Rigpa is this state of consciousness awareness that doesn't have a personal self associated with it. It escapes conceptual construction. However you describe it, it's not that. But instead of being like the furniture in the room, it's more like the space of the room in which all the furniture is appearing in. So the Rigpa is like the space of the room, it's not the stuff, so to speak. The stuff is the energetic formations that manifest luminously and spontaneously from that empty space in a non-dual manner. So this Rigpa isn't material and it isn't personal because it has no concept of anything. It's non-conceptual. So it's real easy. I mean, it couldn't be easier to experience this nature that's your true nature, your ground of nature. And when I say your, you have to take the your, the Y-O-U-R, away from it, because there's nothing that is possessive about it. Meaning, it's not something you own. It's not something that has a me or a my or a mine. And it's not a personal entity. It's not like you want to attain Rigpa, and then you want to stabilize Rigpa for you, because you think Rigpa is a more wisdom state. And so it's kind of like your moments of Rigpa. But there's still some kind of entity there that's having moments of Rigpa. But this is the complete reverse. This is saying that what you are is always Rigpa, having moments of a personality arising. You're not a personality that's being visited or a person who's being visited with Rigpa. Rather, the experience of being a person is what's arising in Rigpa. So the sense of being a person who's looking for this higher state of consciousness, that's like a dream character arising in a dream, while when you wake up, that dream character and all of that disappears, but the consciousness in which the dream was arising is still there, and it hasn't ever changed. So the Rigpa isn't something that is the product of practices or studying or purifying or doing prostrations or nondual or mandala visualization or any of those things. None of those things have anything to do with it, because all of those things are like reflections in a mirror, where you're the mirror, and any actions that are taking place are reflections in the mirror. And none of those reflections, you see, the whole idea is that the reflections somehow think, if they kind of get the right movements and the right purification as being a reflection in the mirror, at some point they will become the mirror. But a reflection cannot become the mirror. The you that you believe you are cannot become Rigpa, because it's a projection of Rigpa, like a dream character. So there's no hope for you to attain Rigpa, because the you that's looking to attain Rigpa is a projection of Rigpa. It's like a dream character. So we're going to be kind of exploring this aspect of the sense of self that's looking to discover this Rigpa, and understanding the nature of that. But we're going to start first with doing a direct introduction to Rigpa, which is the way Dzogchen is supposed to be done. The original Dzogchen was not taught where you do non-dual and different practices. Garab Dorje in the Nyingma tradition taught Dzogchen begins not with non-dual or various purification practices or taking refuge or any of that stuff. There's lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. And each traditions have different stuff. But the Dzogchen tradition, the original Dzogchen tradition, which is what I teach, which is 300 years earlier than what's typically being taught today, which is called the Nintig tradition. In that tradition, there is nothing, as Garab Dorje taught, this is a teaching beyond cause and effect. So if you're doing practices, doing meditation, doing various things to try to get to this state, it has nothing to do with getting to Rigpa. Because Rigpa is not the result of causes. It's not the effect of doing certain things, and then it's a product or the result of whatever you're doing. Because it's always present. It's always present. It's present right now. And so now I'm going to do a type of direct introduction with you, just so that you can see that it's not been something that's so far out and unreachable, but that you can see how intimate it is to every moment of your experience, and always has been. And you've never been apart from it for a moment. So what we're going to do is, you can use this light or any of these lights. We're going to have you close your eyes, and you're going to look at the light as though the light is coming through the translucent eyelids, right? So it's not completely dark. If you cover your eyes right now and make it completely black or completely dark, then you move your hands away, it's a little bit lighter, right? And if you look directly at a light, if you have one by you and you look up to it with your eyes closed, you're going to see kind of an orangey, reddish, brownish, or some kind of color. Is everybody with me? But the key is looking at one of the lights so you can see the difference in the shading. So if you're wearing glasses, you can take them off for a moment and find your light there, and you look at that light, cover your eyes, and now notice the darkness that you're seeing. Now, move your hands away, keep your eyes closed, and you notice there's a lighter color, right? Is everybody with me there? Yeah. Everybody successful with that? Okay, so now the next question is, with your eyes closed, looking at that light, with the hands away from the eyes, what is it that's looking at that light? What is it that's knowing the presence of that light? Now cover your eyes. What is it that's knowing the presence that light just changed from being lighter to being this dark color? Now move your hands away. It's a light color. And that knowing that was knowing the dark color now is knowing the light color. Now you close over your eyes again, and you're noticing the dark color. What is this noticing that's noticing either? That's perfectly knowing and aware. That's the Rigpa. See, the things can change. You can do it with a thought, and we'll be doing these exercises. You could have a thought in your mind. What is it that's knowing the presence of that thought? And then the thought could change, or it could be no thought. What's noticing the moment of no thought? Or what's noticing the empty nature of your mind state? What's noticing that empty, that there's no thought there, but there's a knowing that there's no thought there? What is it that's knowing that? That's the Rigpa. So the Rigpa is this knowing quality that's present in all of our mental and energetic and perceptual formations. And it in itself is empty, like the space of the room. You can move all the furniture around, but the space of the room remains the same. And it's not dualistic because it's like a mirror and the reflections. You can't have reflections and pull them away from the mirror and have the mirror without reflections. You couldn't go to a store and say, yes, I'd like to buy a mirror, and they'd bring the mirror out, and you go, no, I want one that doesn't have any reflections. Because the mirror they show you is reflecting everything in the store. You say, no, I want a mirror that has no reflections. So it doesn't make any difference if there's reflections in the Rigpa or not, it's still the same. Like the mirror is the same, no matter what the reflections are. So what we're seeing, when we close our eyes again, look at the light. It seems like there's two things. It seems like there's a light, and then there's the awareness of the light. But now, as you're looking at the light, see if you can see if there's a boundary, a separation between where the awareness is and it stops at the borderline of where the light begins. Is there a boundary separating the light from the awareness of the light? Can you find that boundary to show that there are really two things are there? There's the light, and then there's the awareness of the light. Or if we look to see if there's any wall or thing that's separating the light from the awareness of the light, if we can't find anything that's separating the awareness from the light, then how can we say that there's two things? There's awareness and light. So now we're getting into the non-dual aspect of Rigpa, that it's not separate from those things that are happening. Now while we have our eyes closed, notice the sound of the heater, and notice the sound, how it's occurring in your awareness, and notice as you're hearing the sound in awareness, because it's occurring in your own awareness, in your own mind, that's where the sound is appearing in your own mind. Even though you think it's over there, the sound is actually occurring in your mind. And as your awareness of the sound, notice if there's any separation. Can you find where the awareness stops and where the sound starts, or where the sound has a border on it and awareness bumps into that border? Or are they just one piece? So notice that for a little bit with the sound. Okay, open your eyes. What did anybody notice? Were you able to find two things there, either in the light in the awareness or the sound in the awareness? Find any kind of border there. Right, so how would you describe, as best you could, what that awareness is that's aware and knowing in the moment of seeing the light, or the light is occurring, or the sound? How would you describe that Rigpa?
Knowingness.
Okay. What?
Openness.
Openness?
Can't describe. For me, it's can't describe. There's no words to actually describe.
Okay. Anyone else?
Awareness, knowing.
What?
Awareness, knowing.
Awareness, knowing. Okay. Anyone else?
Isn't it like a change? Sort of like a change.
A
Between
change?
the dark and the light.
Okay. Anyone else?
There's a stillness.
Okay, there's a stillness. Dilgo Kensei, a famous Dzogchen master, somebody asked him, is there any difference between Rigpa and the mind, the thinking mind? And he said, yes. Rigpa never moves. It's the thinking mind that's moving within it. The Rigpa is always still. It doesn't move. It doesn't have a quality of motion. It doesn't come and it doesn't go. So as in terms of how do you stabilize Rigpa, how do you not have a stable Rigpa? Because it doesn't change. Every experience that you're having, now we're going to go into the three fundamental aspects of every experience, whether it's a color, whether it's a sound. Every experience you're having, if it's an experience, would we all agree it's a moment of consciousness? We don't have to say it's a moment occurring in consciousness. We don't have to get, picky about it. But would we agree in a sort of generic way that any experience that we call an experience, meaning something that's known, is that a moment of consciousness? Yes?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So there's a moment of consciousness. So in the Dzogchen teachings, we could say every single thing that we ever experience is a moment of consciousness. And now we're going to look at what a moment of consciousness is. A moment of consciousness typically is always described this way in Dzogchen. It's called the three qualities of the base, or the three qualities of Rigpa as experience. And the first one we'll talk about first is the ones we were knowing, and that's the energetic formation. Rigpa is always manifesting with a texture. It has a texture quality. It could be sound, it could be colors, it could be light, it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be love, it could be a sense of openness. But there's always some sort of descriptive texture to a moment of consciousness because it's an experience. And so that which we call the experience, if I asked you to describe any experience, the description would contain its texture. You know what I'm saying? By texture? How it feels, or the aspect of it that makes it be an experience. It's not a no experience, it's an experience. So that means every moment of consciousness, every moment of experience has a quality to it. And that's the spontaneous aspect, the energetic formation of every moment of Rigpa. Because every moment of Rigpa is an energetic formation. There's always a texture to it. It's not that textures are occurring in Rigpa, like phenomena are appearing to Rigpa, but Rigpa itself is appearing textured. No. It is not that appearances are appearing in Rigpa. Let me take away the word Rigpa for the moment and say consciousness. Let's just say there's consciousness. A lot of people get a dualistic idea that there are appearances, phenomena, thoughts, feelings, perceptions occurring to this witnessing consciousness, right? Consciousness is having an experience of these perceptions, these feelings, these thoughts occurring to it. What I'm saying is that consciousness itself is appearing as those perceptions and thoughts and textures. There's no two parts. With me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah? Everybody with me? Okay.
But what is the element of it that doesn't move? Because so there's all of the manifesting, right?
Yes.
But there is its own quality that it's unmoving.
You're jumping ahead. That's the third
Okay.
quality.
Okay,
I'm on the
sorry.
first quality.
Okay, sorry.
So on this first quality, that's the energetic formation. Okay? And you can't distinguish that from the consciousness because it's consciousness. That's what consciousness is. Consciousness isn't having experiences. Experiences are what consciousness is. So now the second quality is there's a knowing that's always present in any experience, or else you couldn't say you had an experience, right? There has to be some kind of knowing when experience took place. And when we give a description of the experience, that's the energetic formation aspect of it, the texture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a certain clarity, a knowing, the Rigpa aspect is the second quality that's present, not that it knows the experience, but the experience itself is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not awareness of experiences, rather, experiences are what awareness is. There's no duality there. Okay, so now the third quality is the empty nature of the experience. It's ungraspability of the textures, of the energetic formation, and of the awareness itself. It's ungraspable. In a moment of consciousness, how can you grasp it? It's like a cloud floating through the sky. It has a certain formative quality, but how do you grab that cloud? So every experience that's occurring is the same. It's an ungraspable emptiness that has the quality of knowing and a certain texture to it, but yet it's emptiness that it's ungraspable, it's unfindable as an entity as to itself, like a cloud. You can't like capture the cloud and bring it back home, right? There's no core. There's no solid core to any moment of experience. That you can take that experience and put it in a box. See, I'll open this up later. Take a look at it again. There can be memories of it, but that's not the experience. That's a memory of the experience. Right? Everybody with me? So those are the three basic qualities in Dzogchen that apply to only everything. All moments have a textured quality. They also have a knowing awareness quality, and they also are empty of any inherent self-nature or core to any particular experience. That formula of three aspects applies to your sense of self, your sense of me, your sense of self-identity, and as well to everyone else and everything else. Everything that's appearing is simply a flashing moment of consciousness, and that flashing moment of consciousness has no duration. It has no duration because every moment of consciousness releases upon the arising. So if it releases, this little cloud releases upon the arising, as fast as it releases, there's a concept in Buddhism called anicca, impermanence. Because of the principle of impermanence that the Buddha pointed out, it points out that nothing has any duration. You can say something has duration, but that's just a conceptual designation you're applying to something that actually doesn't have any duration. So, every moment that we're experiencing here right now are just moments of consciousness. And they're like movie frames in a movie. If this was all like a movie film, and we slowed this all way, way, way down, you would have this frame as your moment of consciousness, boom. And then the next frame, boom. And the next frame. These are all moments of consciousness. And when we play these moments of consciousness very fast, it's like a movie. All of the frames seem to tell a story. But when we have just moments of consciousness flashing, so instead of a sentence arising, I take my dog for a walk. That's made up of several words. I take my dog for a walk. Those individual words, if we slowed them down, we slowed the sentence down to I, and then we waited about 5 more minutes. And then the next flash of consciousness, take. And then the next 5 minutes later is my dog for a walk. We would not be having the effect of the movie. We would having just the movie frames, one by one. But when we speed those frames up, we get the effect of the movie. But there's still just individual frames, or moments of consciousness. And each moment of consciousness is empty. It has no duration, and it has no fixed entity with a core. So that applies to yourself, your sense of self, and who and what you feel you are. The egoic self, the awareness self, any kind of self, the witnessing self. Whatever it is, it's just this flashing moment of consciousness. And then there's the next flashing moment of consciousness, and they're never the same moment. It's always a fresh next moment of consciousness. But when they're played so fast together, it gives a sense of continuity. Getting a little bit of the feel of this? It can be a little disturbing. Because the self is, the way the whole biomechanism and all of this is working, it's working to kind of produce a movie effect. And in that movie, there's real selves, there's real people, there's real things that really endure. And there's people and things that come and go, and they have a lifetime, they have a continuity, there's a personality that exists over time, there's a sentient being that exists over time. But these are just moments, flashes of consciousness occurring. You're not doing anything, there's just this experience of what's happening in this particular moment. That's what's happening. And then this is what's happening. And then this is what's happening. And then this is what's happening. But the movie effect, when the mind slows down It's like, also another example would be music. If we take da 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 da, if we take that little jingle and we slow it way down and have 2 minutes between each note, da, da, and we do it like that, and I'd say, guess that tune. You couldn't guess it. But if we speed it up, at some point, speeding it a little bit faster, some quick people would go, jingle bells, it's jingle bells. Other people didn't quite get it yet. So it's the rapidity of these thought moments of consciousness that are producing the sense that there's an individual self continuing in time. But there is no individual self continuing in time because there's just moments, flashing moments of Rigpa that's textured and empty. So it's not like a nihilistic, there's nothing. Well, there is something because there's consciousness, there's experience occurring. But it's empty, and it has texture. But it's ungraspable, and it's empty. Is it giving you a little different flavor of Rigpa? Because most people, if they've been studying or even in certain traditions, they're getting the idea that there's a mind state here that will morph into a Rigpa state. But every mind state is those three things. So if you're in a moment of fear, that's a moment of Rigpa. Why? Because it's those three things. A moment of fear, the texture of that moment of consciousness of fear, the fear is the texture. That's the energetic formation. That's the description. There's an awareness of that fear feeling. That's the Rigpa quality, the knowing quality. And it's empty. How do you grab a feeling of fear? It's like an empty cloud. It has no core. So even anger, fear, hate, any of these things are just moments of Rigpa. There's no alternative. And it's not that any type of experience isn't a moment of Rigpa, because all experiences are simply those three qualities. And they're not three different things. They're just three different ways to describe one thing, a moment of Rigpa. Because that's all there is moments of Rigpa. When we are saying, well, yeah, but I don't get it, I don't feel that Rigpa, that's because your Rigpa in that moment is appearing as that other texture that doesn't feel like Rigpa. But it's still Rigpa. It's that texture of Rigpa that isn't feeling like another moment where Rigpa felt more like an open, compassionate state. Well, that's a moment of Rigpa too. The texture is that compassionate state feeling. So every moment is a moment of Rigpa. So what's there to maintain? Because any state of mind, if you look at that state of mind, it's going to be a texture, it's going to be a description. You can say, what's your state of mind? Oh, I feel shitty. That's the texture of that state of mind. That feeling, that bad feeling. That's the energetic formation that Rigpa is taking in that moment. You see, it's only Rigpa. And it's empty. You can't grasp that shitty feeling. If you could, you'd grab it and throw it away. This is why this is not a gradual path. Because no matter what your state of mind is, it's a state of Rigpa. It's a state of pure awareness manifesting itself as an infinite potential matrix of possible energetic formations, which are all of our states of mind, all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our emotional states, all of our physical states. Have you heard this before? No. But this is classic Dzogchen. This is not Jackson's Dzogchen version. All of the tantras, all of the texts describe this way, that all moments are moments of consciousness, and all of those have the three qualities of the base, which in Tibetan is called Ji. Ji is the base. And those three qualities of the base are always an energetic texture quality. That's the experience, the description, and it's empty. What seems to happen is that if moments of consciousness that are arising, see, it's kind of like any moment of consciousness. I don't want you to kind of, solidify this into another story, but it just kind of give you a helpful idea. If Rigpa is in the center, okay, the middle way, Rigpa, of these three qualities. Let's say, a seesaw. Do you know what that is? A children's thing where they get on the seesaw and they go, right? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the middle of the seesaw is the fulcrum.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Rigpa, so to speak. Rigpa can lean to the emptiness side, so to speak. There's more of the emptiness aspect of those three aspects, which is more the liberating, the openness qualities. That's the texture you're getting. Oh no, Rigpa's not fear, it's openness. That's because you're tilted like this, into the emptiness side. If it's like, no, Rigpa, or no, my experience is all sadness and depression, that's because those are those textures you're leaning into this side. And the unchanging aspect is the Rigpa in the middle, so to speak. And it's either manifesting more its emptiness type texture, or it's manifesting more its energetic, formative, contracted energy kind of texture that it seems we're trying to get away from. So we're trying to escape our own energetic formations. It's like we're painting a picture of a demon, and we're such good artists, the demon scares the hell out of us. And now we're trying to figure out how we can get rid of the demon, to get rid of our fear. As though now the demon has an existence onto itself without realizing we projected the demon, and now we're being victimized by projection of our own consciousness. So every moment of consciousness you're having is very workable, right? Because every moment of consciousness, whether it's sadness, depression, hate, love, joy, bliss, those are all just different textures of Rigpa. And none are of any higher seniority than any other. One is not more Rigpa than another. That's like saying, your right hand glove is superior to your left hand glove. Again, so this is why you have to understand there's no gradual practice here. Every state of mind is already a state of Rigpa. It's either in its empty nature. You're saying, what's your state of mind right now? It's all just this open transparency of being everything. That's the texture. What's your state of mind now? I'm kind of depressed and nervous. That's the texture. Yes?
Where does the acceptance come into this?
Acceptance is just another texture. There's no one, it's just another texture. So if you say acceptance, that's just another kind of feeling of accepting, but there's no one there to do accepting because there's just a moment of consciousness occurring. So there isn't someone that these moments of consciousness are occurring to. So it's not saying, my moment of Rigpa is described this way. No, there's just the moment of Rigpa, which is that verbalization, that narrative saying, my moment of Rigpa right now is a sense of openness. And so the mind is thinking that sense of openness is the description. No, it's the whole sentence is how Rigpa is appearing in that moment. My moment of Rigpa is a moment of openness. It's not just the moment of openness that's the texture. It's my moment of Rigpa is the moment of the texture of that feeling of openness. That's the whole thing is how it's unfolding. See, so every moment, every second is just an unfolding of Rigpa consciousness. There's nothing there to grasp. And none of this is occurring to someone. because there's no someone. If there's a feeling of me, feeling of sense of self, that's how Rigpa is manifesting its texture, that feeling of self. But if we sit and we just observe that feeling and look for it, we could actually do an introspection and look for that me. You won't find it there. Why? What do you discover? You discover the empty quality. Remember, because every moment has those three characteristics. You can search for the energetic formation, you can search for the cloud in the sky, but you never can grab it. You discover its empty nature. So you can have a certain feeling or a certain belief or a certain conceptual construction, and you can do an introspection and you can look inwards to find it, and all you will discover by inwardly looking is its empty nature. In every case. Yes.
So I'm a witness?
What?
The witness?
Witness, yes, there's no witness.
No witness.
That's just the sense of being a witness is the texture that's appearing as that moment of consciousness. And if you then say, okay, I'm a witness, you look at that. You say, is there a witness really there? Let's find the witness. And you look inwards. You close your eyes and you say, okay, I'm sensing I'm a witness. All right, so let's find this witness who's in here. What do you find? Nothing at all. There's no witness in there. And what you discovered was the emptiness of that witness. You looked inward to find the witness. You looked inward to find the me. And when you're looking inward, you don't find the me. You might find thoughts about a me. You might find memories of a me and mental images of a self-image of a me. But you say, okay, let's put that stuff aside. Now where's the me? And what do you discover? Nothing at all. That's the empty nature of the me.
Is that the empty nature? That's the empty bit.
That's the empty side. See, so every experience has all of these things at the same time. The ones, again, going into the narrative, a different hierarchy, going into the narrative, oh, I don't like this feeling of being a constricted, selfing me. That's just, you've gone too far onto the energetic formation side. If you look inwards at that directly, introspectively, you don't find the thing, the experience. You don't find it as having any real ground or core or center to it. And so it's tilted back to the emptiness side. And it's gone. So we're going to take a short break. And we're going to do a practice afterwards to where we're going to work with some things that we're going to see directly how this is directly. Okay? So we'll take about a 5 or 10 minute break. Let's make it a 5 minute break.
Yeah.
Okay. So, great question. We'll lead up to it. That's a little higher, that's a higher hierarchy than quite where I'm at right now. So we're at the Planck scale, okay? We're at that smallest where we can't find anything there. What Roger Penrose, the Nobel laureate in quantum physics, proposed from his research and his speculations of metaphysics is that at the level of the Planck scale, there are Platonic values. Platonic values would be called virtues. We would say bodhicitta. At the very ground, the substance of the universe is bodhicitta. It's everything. It's in everything. It's evolving as life. It's evolving as everything. It's all bodhicitta. And it's empty. And it's in this reappearing of the new formation of bodhicitta. So those are like archetypes, fundamental archetypes that are self-organizing qualities. The lower harmonic in the bioforms or biological forms, that granting of beingness. A granting of beingness is another way to describe the fundamental bodhicitta. It's not really a compassion. That's another hierarchy description of kind of a dualistic hierarchy. But it's a emanation of the granting of beingness to everything. Otherwise there'd be no anything. There'd be no appearances. Appearances are inherently being granted a condition of beingness. And that's the main archetype. And then these are what we would call the Buddha attributes. The attributes of a Buddha are these archetypes that are infused in everything. And they're guiding everything. They are what everything is. That's why we have the term great perfection. Longchenpa says the great perfection is everything that's appearing is absolutely a manifestation of that great perfection, because it's an unfolding of this bodhicitta. That's its substance, that's what it is. It's bodhicitta. He says all of the activities of your karmic mind, all the negative thoughts, all the negative feelings are also perfect, because they're just unfolding of bodhicitta in those particular forms. And also, all of the events and phenomena you see in your life and the world around you are all just manifestations of bodhicitta unfolding. And that the whole reality of this reality is the great perfection called Tigle Chempo, the great hypersphere, the perfect hypersphere that's working its moments in all moments, because every moment of consciousness, any movement of energy is a movement of bodhicitta. There's nothing else happening other than movements of bodhicitta. That's why you don't have to do any practice, because the practice is what you are. You're an unfolding of the bodhicitta and the awareness and the wisdoms that are the bodhicitta. So there's no needing to do a superficial practice to be something that you already are. You are the great perfection that's unfolding in whatever you do. Whether you consider it virtuous or unvirtuous, it's still another manifestation of bodhicitta. And there isn't something that's more bodhicitta than something that's less bodhicitta, because the bodhicitta is infused at the level of the Planck scale. It's what this all is. And that's why Dzogchen is the only one I know of that refers to its view as the great perfection. That's why the notion of having to effort to do practice and so forth is to deny the great perfection that's already functioning as your life, in your life, just exactly as it is. Whichever way you go, the road leads to Rome. Because there's only Rome, and you're already there. Relax. But the fictional stories go against that. Yeah, Jackson, well, what about all the starving children that are dying, blah, 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 or about the little the children that are raped and all that? You know, you can come up with all of the counter examples and so forth, but those are still just more expressions of bodhicitta. It's like you're cooking a cake. All the ingredients are in the cake. Now it's put in the oven. Turn it on, let it cook, let it finish, and it's all going to come out perfect. So relax. You're all in the oven. You got all the right ingredients. It's 100% bodhicitta, and it's cooking. It gets hot a little bit at times, but that's how you do it. If you didn't have suffering, so to speak, you'd never look for a resolution of the suffering.
Yeah.
Something like that. Getting the flavor of this?
Yes.
It's a little different.
I want to clarify something with you.
Please.
So and I haven't. I find it very hard to use words to even try to describe what the question is.
Good, then don't bother. Anyone else? Questions? Stand-up comedian.
But I'll try. But I'm sorry if it's not so
Well, you should.
clear. So this notion, well, the truth that we live these moments of Rigpa, like you call it moments of
No, we don't live them. They
Well,
are
all
what's
the-
us.
Yes. So the
How can you have a question after that? The
No.
question is that moment of bodhicitta Rigpa that's arising.
the clarification that I want is because it feels to me like
Now,
there
is that the movie or is that the individual frames talking? Is that kind of like the movie story that's being expressed? I kind of feel like, or is that just the individual
no,
moments of
this
consciousness?
is frames.
Frames.
This is, of course, it's frames.
Okay. It sounds a little bit like a movie to me, but go ahead.
Well, it's what frames are a movie.
No, the movie is what the mind takes the frames to be.
Yes.
Yes. So carry on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be so
Like,
obnoxious.
why am I the movie?
I'm sorry, just being obnoxious. It's part of my nature.
No, like the analogies in all the traditions, right? The movie's projected, it needs the screen. In the example you gave earlier with the ocean, the ocean is there, right? There's something that is constant and stable.
No,
No.
it's empty. So it's not a something that's constant and stable.
There's
an absence that's constant and
there's this
stably
emptiness.
absent. Yeah.
There's always the emptiness thing.
Yes, but it's always stuff going on in it.
Yeah.
It's like a TV and the TV shows. TV shows, you're the TV shows are always playing, but the TV in which the TV shows are playing is never changed by any of the TV shows.
Correct.
Okay.
So those analogies always kind of, they don't really work because in that when it's a TV then we've made it into an object, right? But we know that we're talking about something that's
It's a
not.
metaphor.
Yeah, right? So this that you call emptiness, I would call it the self from my tradition.
The what?
The self.
Yes, I would not call it.
You would not call it that.
I would say the notion of the self is a notion of a self.
Yeah, because the Buddhists believe that it's the traditional, I believe myself to be myself, so, right? So, there's like, in yoga there's two, there's one that's like the ocean, and then there's the little one that thinks it's a self. That's the one that doesn't exist,
That's
right?
the whirlpool that has
That's
a
the
temporary
whirlpool.
arising. Right.
So the constant one is the one that really interests me, right? And so we call it the TV set, the ocean, the movie screen, and that analogy, right? I feel like the reason we believe that we are something that is constant, or a thing, or that we exist, is because we're experiencing this continuity of this like constant thing, which is not a thing, I know. And of course, all the, like, I'm busy reading Robert Saltzman's book, The 10,000 Things, and he's constantly going on about, I'm just a stream of thoughts, and I'm just,
Right. He's a materialist.
But there's something that's noticing all of that. I just feel like screaming that at him, like, hello. What notices this stream of, like what you were calling earlier, like the flashes of Rigpa?
There isn't a something that's noticing it, you see, because that's still a dualism. So if we say
No,
there's-
okay, so it's language, because you can't, obviously that makes it
no,
into
I
a
think that's an
thing.
important point.
That
No,
makes it into a thing, right? But we know, you know that I'm speaking about not a thing noticing, right?
what I'm trying to clarify here, is that if the storyline of your concept that you're trying to convey, that seems somewhat paradoxical, and you want to clarify this, that is made up of individual thoughts, right? So if I say, write down your narrative, turn in your question to me, you would write down your question, right? And it'd be made up of individual words, sentences, that would describe what you're trying to say. I could read that. But that communication is made up of individual words that are grouped together in a certain fashion that builds a conceptual framework of your question. What I'm saying is that all there are is the individual word occurring, then that word, then that word, and that word, and that your question itself, this is not personal, is irrelevant. I don't mean your question, you are irrelevant. I'm just saying that the composed structure in your mind of the question gives the illusion that there's something here, either a self or a me that's having experiences, where if we break it down into noticing that there's just moments of consciousness occurring, all of that disappears.
Yeah. So you're saying that it's just those.
It's just this moment of consciousness,
And then
and this moment of
yeah.
consciousness, and this moment of consciousness, and there's nothing to any of it.
and there is no background, there's no self, there's no ground of being, there's none of that. All of that's nonsense.
Conceptualized ground of being, background, and all of that is conceptual. But we're saying if we take all those concepts away, we take the self away, we take the over self, we take Brahman away, we take para Brahman away.
But I mean, even Brahman is supposed to be like inside of the
Para
self.
Brahman.
Yeah, take
Okay.
it all away, right? But still, there's
no,
nothing.
we take away the concepts of emptiness, we take away the concepts of nothing. We take away all the concepts describing anything you're trying to describe. We give it no conceptual feet to start walking on. Okay, we take all of its shoes away. It can't walk now in this area because we took all of its shoes away. So now what are we left with? Your question is no longer present because it's a concept. The ideas that it's trying to frame are no longer being talked about because those are concepts. So we took all the concepts away, all the descriptions away. What are we left with? That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes, so leave it there.
No, but
Beyond the mind.
Leave it there don't now put it into a conceptual framework. Leave it beyond the frameworks because it can't be conceptualized. And every time we try to conceptualize it, all we're left with is another fantasy.
no, but okay.
Thank you. Next. Go ahead.
No, it's just maybe I must just think about the
No, maybe you should not think about it.
no, it was so beautiful earlier when you were speaking about that.
Things
when you
that
said
agreed with the framework that you believe
No,
in.
because for me, you said it's all bodhicitta. I like that
Yes,
because it's what it feels like to me.
it is that.
So I don't like it when, and then I know that that's a preference, of course I know, but there's this kind of a lot of discussion about it's all just flashes, it's just, and I just feel like saying, but it's not just these flashes and means nothing.
Well, it doesn't mean nothing, it's bodhicitta.
Yeah, but then now you're going back to giving it, like you said, don't say anything about it.
No, you're talking about the self. You're saying that there is this, your context of your question, which was eloquently placed, was that there is an unchanging self that's kind of behind it all and so forth and so on. I'm arguing against that description. I am not saying that my description is the same as your description. I am saying the archetypes which are being expressed from what you're trying to talk about are the archetypes of bodhicitta. You're talking about the ground from which all of that is arising, that is constant and is not changing, and gives one a sense of this unchanging self, which then different religious things call God, or they call Brahma, or they call Parabrahman, or they call Shiva, or they call it the Buddha nature, or they call it Nirvana, and they call it all different things. Those are all different frames of reference that are trying to construct an understanding and a description
Of something that can't be described.
that can't be described in that particular way. And so all the Buddha was saying was that any of the descriptions aren't it. You know,
But he
Korzybski,
wasn't saying that there isn't it.
he was
You
saying
were just
that
saying
he
you
was
can't
saying that
describe it.
he was saying that the it isn't the it you think it is.
Yeah, of course.
Whatever you think it is, that's not what
It's
it
not
is.
it, yeah.
It's not it.
You can't think
Right.
it's something, because the minute you conceptualize it, then of course. But it doesn't mean that you're not experiencing it, right? Or you're not feeling it, or it's not there.
Well, you are it. And it's expressing itself exactly as those thoughts you're having that are paradoxical right now. That's that it, that para-Brahman that you're trying to get a hold of. It's manifesting itself as you asking that question.
Yeah.
Now, leave it there. What I just said was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you understand? That it's That it is manifesting itself as you with your exact emotional state, your exact state of mind, your exact thought, your exact question. That's what it is. Come on, let's turn the lights on.
My chance.
Okay.
But it's okay because that's it, is expressing itself as whatever is happening. Everything that's happening is it manifesting itself as exactly what's happening. And those three characteristics are, what's happening is the texture, that's the energetic formation aspect. There's a knowing that something's happening, that's the Rigpa, the awareness clarity aspect. And there's the empty nature of all of that. It's all ungraspable. The it can't be grasped. It's not a thing. It's not something that continues in time. But time exists within it, like the TV show. The TV could be timeless, you could say. The only concept of time is within the TV show, within the thoughts about time. But there's not an it, para Brahman or whatever, that's continuing through time. Because Einstein pointed out that time is relative. Space is relative to the observer. Time is relative to the observer. Since time is relative, there's no such thing called absolute time. So if there's no such thing as absolute time, time is relative. And what does relative mean? It means it's a conceptual construction. It doesn't mean there's something out in space called relative time. You know, it's like an aunt or an uncle relative time. There is no relative time that exists other than the framework of succession of events calculated against their movement that's generated in a person's psychology. That's all time is. Einstein even pointed that out. So that means when you then assign something like time, which is a construction of a mind, to it that's far beyond mind, that it appears as minds, then you start to understand the thing itself has no continuation because it's not in a time frame. Does anybody understand
No, I
that?
understand.
It's not in a time frame. It creates the time frames as it's manifesting itself as a mind, body, this and that. Yes.
I maybe don't understand this, but I'll just use the word God. Just make
Sure,
it easier.
why not?
So what I understand is that the Buddha didn't believe or didn't recognize the creator. He recognized the created. But I want to know, in this
But he didn't recognize the created either because
that's what I'm saying.
because he deconstructed it and
Yeah.
said it's just a moment of this perception.
Correct.
Moments of perception, the mind then reifies and turns those into things. But for instance, our eyes, we could normally say, what are you seeing? Oh, I'm seeing chairs, I'm seeing people. No, eyes don't see chairs and people. Eyes only see colors, but they don't even see colors. That's why we're going to get into this deconstruction.
So then, so the Buddha said that, and so with people like with God created, God created, God created. He didn't deny that, but when we look at this amazing life that we live, or the amazing creation, what is behind? I mean, how much intelligence? How high is the intelligence that caused all this?
That's who's asking that question. You said in the beginning you were
that's
God,
what
you
I'm asking.
realized
So
you
is
were
that the
God, so
correct-
I'm telling you that's true.
So then, how come like they all go? How come they don't recognize that? How come they go, God this, God that, God created you, God's
That
going to
is-
punish you?
That is how it is manifesting.
Condition.
It's all perfect because it's all how the bodhicitta is manifesting. So everything you're thinking is it being you thinking those thoughts. And that can be experienced directly. In the Sufi tradition, we do certain practices to where out of the blue suddenly you are the it. It's like you have the mirror, you're being reflections in the mirror. And you're looking around, you've heard about this clear, crystal clear mirror that doesn't change. And you're a reflection in the mirror, and you're looking for this mirror. You are looking for the mirror, but you're the reflection. And you're looking for the mirror, and you can't find the mirror. and you're not really sure if there's a mirror there. There's a kind of practice or an exercise or an inward looking to where that reflection, this is where the language breaks down, and really it's more like a quantum leap, where suddenly, a quantum leap means one change goes to the next change without an intervening mode of arrival. So it's not going through a transformation. It's this, and then it reappears as this here without going through a path, okay? This is kind of like that. You're in this moment to where it seems you are a reflection in the mirror. You've heard about the mirror being Rigpa or Nirvana or whatever it may be, or the self or whatever it is. And now you're on the search. You're searching for this mirror, right? You're meditating, you're doing practices, you're doing nondual, you're doing all this stuff they're telling you to do, and you've been doing it for 40 years and you still can't find that mirror, right? Something can happen spontaneously where suddenly there's a quantum leap. You are no longer in the position of looking for the mirror. You are suddenly the mirror seeing you looking for the mirror. And you realize that's the mirror projecting you looking for the mirror. And it's the mirror that's projecting you looking for the mirror with the thought of, oh, where's the mirror? The mirror is projecting the thought and you of looking for the mirror.
So the mirror is like your eyebrow, you just can't see it.
The mirror is what?
It's like your eyebrow, you just can't see it. It's right
Kind of like
there.
your eyebrow. But in this consciousness that occurs, in this quantum shift, it's happened here, and it's so radical to where the seeker is the sought, and it's the seeker is seen as a projection of the sought seeking itself. So in the Kabbalah tradition, they say God is playing hide and go seek with himself. So he creates a pseudo-self that looks for himself. And in the Sufi tradition, they say, I am an undisclosed treasure. And so the seeker is seeking that treasure. And in that moment of quantum leap consciousness, it's recognized, not that you, the reflection, have become that. It's that there's just, you're not that, you're this. And this is projecting that, the self that you seem to be.
That's projecting itself, right?
Yeah.
That has no, that is not Rigpa.
The knowing of that is the Rigpa wisdom. When we say Rigpa, we've got a couple different meanings. It can be kind of like a noun, and it can be kind of like an adjective or a descriptive word. Rigpa, in this particular case, if we're using it, I would prefer to use Dharmakaya in the Buddhist tradition. That's like Parabrahman. It's empty. It doesn't have characteristics per se. Okay, that has potential archetypes embedded in it, which we call in Buddhism the Sambhogakaya, which then manifest as the projections of bodhicitta. But the Dharmakaya is where all of this is arising from. They would call it in quantum physics the vacuum. We would call it they would call it the vacuum, because in that vacuum, in that 0 point energy vacuum, it's not empty. It's seething with what they call positrons and matter and antimatter, really, really subtle vibrations that are nullifying each other as they're arising. Okay, like a particle is arising and its antiparticle is arising, and they're meeting each other and they're destroying each other in each moment. But out of that seething, some carry on. And that's why this is possible. Some carry on. So best way I could describe it is that it's an empty potentiality that's continuously manifesting itself in these various infinite moments of consciousness.
And it has, does it have stability?
If it has a job. With stability, it's
Is that what we?
it doesn't have stability, and you can't be stably it because you are already it being you thinking about stability.
I actually, I don't know, I don't have a word for it. I would say I experienced that, but I won't use the word.
But it's not you experiencing it, it's it having you having the sense that you're experiencing it.
Okay. I don't know how to describe it.
It's very difficult.
And
You can't describe it.
unless you say it like that, like the Russian doll, I call it the Russian doll thing where the thing is inside the thing, that's the thing.
And there's no
There's
doll at the
nothing,
bottom.
There's no doll.
There's no doll at the bottom.
But it just, so I really find value in placing like attention on it, right? Or what I would say, feeling it, right? And it feels like it's always there.
And that's what it's manifesting
Right.
you as, feeling like it's almost, that
Yes.
it's always there.
Yes.
And for some people,
Because
it's manifesting
It's
that
going on in
never
this
there.
instrument, right?
Right.
So, because of that, there is a feeling of continuity.
Yes, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
That's the texture of this moment.
Because if it was just like
It
the
is,
flash,
it is just that flashing. There's
So-
nothing continuing.
there's something that knows the flashes.
No, that sense that there's something that knows the flashes is a flash.
It's Rigpa. That's what it is.
So it's one big flash and that knows all the little flashes.
No, there's only little flashes. It's knowing itself through the little flashes, because it's infinite potential. Everything that's occurring, every thought, everything is another expression of it.
I'm sorry if I'm trying to get really down into it, but it's very important to me because it makes a huge difference in meaning.
But you know what's beautiful about
So
this?
it's a
Wait, do
little
you know
bit
what's
like
beautiful
there's
about
meaning or there's no fucking meaning. Excuse me.
No, there is no. The bodhicitta is the archetypes that give everything the meaning. You see, it's not neutral. This is the beauty of this. Because the archetypes of bodhicitta, unconditional love, you could say, granting of beingness, you could say, and the Buddha attributes of virtue, platonic values, are the ground. We know when we live a life that's in accord with that very deep ground of integrity, we're happy with ourselves and our life works, right? That's how we know. We're in synchronicity, with that basic bodhicitta that is slightly biased. See, all of it isn't neutral, it's not all relative. In the Dzogchen teaching, Samantabhadra, which is the representation of it, in the Dzogchen teachings, it is called Samantabhadra. Samantabhadra is like the origin of everything that's a projection of Samantabhadra. But Samantabhadra isn't just a projector. Samantabhadra means translated Kuntuzanpo in Tibetan. That means the all-good one. It's the all-good one. So all of reality is slightly tilted towards the basis of virtue and integrity. Not in relative terms, but in deeply, deeply felt understandings of what's righteous. It's called integrity. And all people know when they're violating their basic root of integrity. You know it. I know I shouldn't do this, but I knew I shouldn't have done it. Now what am I going to do? I shouldn't have had that affair on this business trip. You know it. Most of it is just culturally guilt. You know, you're raised a Catholic, and if you have sex before you're married, you feel bad. That's not this integrity. This is something deeper down. It's deeper down. So it's slightly tilted towards the positive. That's why it's called the all-good one. So that gives us some insight into the empty nature of the self, and looking at that self as just momentary arisings of a sense of a feeling of me as a doer. And tonight you can reflect on the notion of the feeling of me, the sense of identity. It doesn't have to be there. It wasn't always there. From the ages of being born to about 15 to 24 months, there was no me center there. It usually, child psychologists, and I agree with their studies, indicates that it doesn't really start to appear until the child's about 15 to 24 months old. They get used to their name, they get used to other things. Like imagine in that first 2 days that you're born, this gives you a good analogy of what we would call being really slanted towards the Rigpa emptiness side. It doesn't deny the energetic formations, but here's this brand new baby. We were all there, right? I hope.
Yeah.
Except for the clones.
We
How many
don't-
clones did you say were good?
We don't remember because there was no I there.
What's that?
We don't remember it.
That you don't remember it because you didn't have it. That means you're one of the clones. You have to leave. Normal people do remember this. If you can't remember the first couple of days of being born, that's the greatest indicator that you're not a real human. You're one of these clones. So now just check, see if you have the memory, and if you don't, you can leave. And the ones who do have the memory, they can stay. No, so I forgot where I was. What was I?
No sense of self when you're born.
Yes, no
2
sense of
days old.
self when you're
You're 2
born.
days old.
I was too involved in that memory. There's no sense of self when you're born. What is that experience like? Just remember, I mean, kind of, if you want to really feel the sense of what we talk about non-conceptual Rigpa, because it's always non-conceptual, just imagine you're 2 days old or 3 days old, and you're just looking around. There's no me, there's no mommy, there's no daddy, there's no anybody, because you don't know what all that stuff is. All it is patches of colors and things moving around, right? None of it makes any kind of sense, but you don't want it to make sense anyway, because there's no one here saying, oh, this should make sense. I don't get this. That isn't happening. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of that person or that thing. What is that thing? What is that? What are those blobs of colors moving across? It hasn't even come to things yet, right? It's just a pure consciousness, and phenomena are arising in that pure consciousness. That's all that's occurring. There's no judgment. Oh God, I hope they remember to feed me later. Or, oh God, not that nurse again. None of that's occurring, right? At 2 days old, none of that's occurring. So there's no self here. There's no self that's comparing how things are treating it, or what's going to happen tomorrow, or should I be worried about, what's going to happen in a couple hours. There's no anxiety about what's going to happen next, because there's no me that things can happen to. The me hasn't showed up yet. It's a piece of bio software generated by the DNA that doesn't come online as a software product until the body's about 15 to 24 months old. Then that me thing starts to click and starts to come on. And then ever since that time, that me illusion, it's a software, it's a piece of software, it's an add-on. That me that's developed over that amount of time is just an illusion. There's no me here. And if you look inwards to find the me, you can't find the me. And in that not finding the me, you can relax. We're going to be doing practices on this tomorrow, but we're going to be relaxing down into our heart. And our consciousness is literally moving down into our heart, and this relaxes, and then there's a kind of like a knot in the heart of energy in the heart chakra, and it will kind of go like this. And when it goes, the sense of me disappears, because the me is simply a contraction of your prana in the heart chakra centered around the concept of me. When that me concept is released, the prana that's being contracted by that me that's focusing inwards to a me releases. And then there's no me. There's just this vast consciousness. It is so fucking beautiful, it's indescribable. And there's no me to it. So we'll work on that tomorrow. So there's a homework assignment for you tonight that as you're going to sleep, I want you to do this every night and every morning. As you're going to sleep, remember this because I'm going to ask all of you what you experienced in the morning. You'll all have your turn. So, and I'll know by your answers if you really did it. And you can't ask the other people, otherwise you probably give the same answer. Ditto, ditto, ditto. As you're going to sleep, you close your eyes and you look into, like you were looking at the light at your eyelids. You're looking the same way, but up a little higher, as though you were looking up to here. Instead of looking forward, your awareness inside, instead of looking forward at the eyes, it's as though you're looking a little bit up. You understand?
Third eye.
Kind of like looking up to where the third eye would be, without thinking, third eye. You're just looking into that space. You'll notice at first it'll be like you're just looking into darkness. And as you're looking into that darkness, it may be like you're driving in the fog, where the fog is right up close and you're afraid to even drive a little bit because you can't see anything, right? At night or in the daytime. The fog is so dense right here, it's like with your eyes closed, it's dark, but it's like dense dark, cloudy dark. Keep looking into that without thinking deliberately about anything. Just the practice is to be looking into that with your power of looking, your power of visual perception, so to speak. You're looking into that space. After a period of time, if you're patient with this and don't fall right asleep, after a period of time, it will become less cloudy. And you'll start sensing a clarity to it, black, dark clarity, as though you're looking up at the sky at night on a clear winter night. And you can see all the stars, but there's this sense of depth, of space. Spacious, clear depth. There's no clouds in the sky, right? I'm sure as kids you've laid on your back sometime and you look up at the sky at night and you just see this, wow, and it's the clarity of the darkness and the twinkling of the stars. Gives you a sense of depth, a sense of distance. So it will start unfolding into more of a sense of seeing depth. And crystal clear, it might become crystal clear blackness. Like onyx, black onyx will be the kind of the feeling of a crystal clear space. If you're patient, that will occur. And if you keep going with that, the inner state of the observer who's observing that will also become equally clear and crystal clear, and will take on a different cognitive quality. So we continue with that. You may see things in this clear space if you hang with it. And if you hang with it, you may actually see there's like a space here inside, an inner space, and the dreams that you're about to dream will start forming in that space. So instead of you being in the dream, you're like watching the movie being projected onto a screen. So there's that sort of experience that can occur. Other things can occur, and I won't tell you more of what those other things can occur because I want to see if anybody reports those things. And in the retreats that I give, there's always 1, 2, or 3 people who give a very, very specific description of something that they were seeing in that space, of that something is appearing there.
And then when you wake up in the morning, do the same.
Do the same in the morning when you wake up, before you get out of bed. Look into that space. Okay? Everybody clear with that? Anything else before we end for tonight? Was that enough for one night?
Yeah.
Okay, good night. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.